And in speaking of not knowing what's coming your way, we've got Pete Wyatt with us today. You never know what he's going to tell us about, what he's ran into in his career. If you don't know Pete worked for us for a long time, and we're going to dive into his career today and hear some stories of his adventures across Tennessee, and I'll remind him it's a family-friendly show, right? And
he's so introverted, I don't know how we'll ever get him to talk, but we'll do our best.
83, you said you started?
83 in Unicoi County as a wildlife officer. And then I actually retired as a manager for, which if you're in non-game or just wildlife, they don't really have a name for you. Some of my employees have a name for me, but yes.
The wildlife czar.
Czar, yes.
East Tennessee was.
Okay.
Yeah, that was an experiment in itself. You were talking about what my legacy that I left. I think that several of the people that work for me told me that they've gotten off their blood pressure medicine since I retired. So maybe that's true, I don't know. But it was a great run, and I really enjoyed it. I still enjoy it. There is life after the agency.
Mm-hmm. It's funny, the stories you hear and the adventures you take working out in the woods. And I know you've got plenty of stories, which you've mentioned in your book, and those stories are in there. And
when I was 3 years old, I got bit by a dog that had rabies. Not that has anything to do with this. But later on in life, I found out when we started doing bat work and we had to have the rabies preventative shots, I broke out in hives. The second one they gave me, the CDC down there wanted to study my blood, but that's another story altogether.
The award-winning Tennessee WildCast is on the air with the latest on hunting, fishing, boating, wildlife watching, and all things outdoors. Make welcome your host, drummer and outdoor expert novice, Jason Harmon.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Tennessee WildCast. We're glad you're tuning in. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We got a fun show for you today. We are at the John Sevier Hunter Education Center right outside Knoxville, Tennessee, and I'm excited to be here with Matt Cameron helping co-host. He's going to be with me for a few shows. Matt, thanks for having us up here.
Always glad to have you back in East Tennessee, brother.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I always love coming up to this area. Grew up Southeast Tennessee, and it's always good to get back on this side of the plateau. So
Rocky Top country, baby.
Yeah, Rocky Top will always be. Hey, WildCast is on the radio, if you don't already know that, and we appreciate our radio partners, and I wanted to highlight WOKI today, WOKI News Talk 98.7 in Knoxville. We're on there on Saturday afternoons, 1:30 to 2, and we really appreciate our radio partners, especially News Talk 98.7. You're on that station every so often, right, Matt?
Yeah, once a month I get the great privilege of going on the Bob Yarbrough show and talking all things wildlife with him, and it's a wonderful segment. A lot of great listeners, I guess, here in East Tennessee, and get a lot of interesting questions from the public. So, yeah, we appreciate the time that WOKI gives us.
Yeah, awesome. I always enjoy listening to those shows. I don't ever catch them live, but I catch them after the fact sometimes. He'll post it on Twitter or something, and it's fun to listen to those conversations. You get some pretty funny calls.
At first, I was nervous about it, taking live calls. You just have no idea what that person's going to ask, but I've grown to enjoy it and realize you don't always have the correct answer. You don't make up stuff, but you get them the answer later or whatever, so it doesn't intimidate me as bad as it used to.
Well, yeah, and in speaking of not knowing what's coming your way, we've got Pete Wyatt with us today. You never know what he's going to tell us about, what he's ran into in his career. If you don't know Pete worked for us for a long time, and we're going to dive into his career today and hear some stories of his adventures across Tennessee, and I'll remind him it's a family-friendly show, right? And
he's so introverted, I don't know how we'll ever get him to talk, but we'll do our best.
I'm looking forward to it. Pete, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the offer.
Your career with the agency is known by many. I hear your name, and there's all kinds of fun stories around it, and we're looking forward to this conversation today and just learning more about you. So let's jump in and meet Pete. So tell us a bit about yourself and kind of how you got to your career and growing up in the outdoors and that kind of thing.
Well, I was born and raised in Concord, Tennessee. On my birth certificate, it says Concord, and you don't hear that town mentioned very often now, but I was raised in West Knoxville and on a little farm, 5-acre farm. We had cows and pigs and chickens and everything that went with it, and had some woods that I spent most of my time in the woods raking over leaves looking for creatures and critters, and my mother would say that, that if she was looking for me, they'd come back in the woods. And when I was 3 years old, I got bit by a dog that had rabies. Not that that has anything to do with this. But later on in life, I found out when we started doing bat work and we had to have the rabies shots, the preventative shots, I broke out in hives the second one they gave me, and the reason was because my titer was higher than that they'd ever seen. Than the CDC down there wanted to study my blood, but that's another story altogether. But I was raised in the outdoors. My dad was an avid fisherman, and he rabbit hunted and squirrel hunted. We didn't have deer then, really, to speak of in East Tennessee. But I enjoyed squirrel hunting. That's really was a passion for a long time. And my first job with TWRA was in 1982 as a part-time boating officer at the World's Fair. And there were 6 of us, and all 6 of us retired from TWRA with over 30 years in the career. I think Richard Kirk was the last one to go. I don't know if he needed the money or he just liked the power. I think it was the power. But anyway, after that, then I got a job in Unicoi County as a wildlife officer, and that's where the majority of the stories in my books are coming from, is the Unicoi County years. It was a decade up there. And then I actually retired as a manager 4, which if I was in law enforcement, they call them majors, but if you're in non-game or just wildlife, they don't really have a name for you except manager 4.
Manager, yeah.
Except some of my employees have a name for me, but yes.
You preferred the wildlife czar.
Czar, yes.
East Tennessee, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was an experiment in itself. But by the way, you were talking about what my legacy that I left. I think that several of the people that work for me told me that they've gotten off their blood pressure medicine since I retired. So maybe that's true. I don't know. But it was a great run, and I really enjoyed it. I still enjoy it. I get to still have contact with a lot of the people that have retired from TWRA, and there is life after the agency.
Mm-hmm. It's funny, the stories you hear and the adventures you take working out in the woods. And I know you've got plenty of stories, which you've mentioned in your book, and those stories are in there. And you got coming out with a 3rd volume here pretty soon.
Hopefully,
right?
Yes, by Thanksgiving or December sometime there.
Yeah.
Tell our folks listening and watching about your book. Jason and I can't hardly pronounce part of the title, so you may have to read it for us.
Well, I'll read it for you. It's very simple. It's the same title except for the very last 4 letters there, but it's an Appalachian gamekeeper's soliloquy of humorous tales. Then there's a colon there, so that's the main title. And then it's selected game warden stories of people and places of Upper East Tennessee. And volume 1, that's volume 1. And the picture on volume 1 is an old man that's standing on the Chestoa Bridge trestle at Unica Springs in Unicoi County, and he's got the day's catch. It came off a 1904 postcard. Copyright isn't in effect here because it's over 100 years old. And then volume 2, a long time ago, people used to get dressed up when they got pictures of their game animals that they killed. And this is a squirrel hunter in his suit and tie. I thought that was kind of cool. And then volume 3 will have a picture of a 1937 Ford pickup truck with a dog box on it. And they're selling rabbit dogs, squirrel dogs, fox hounds. No bear dogs. But anyway, it's all these have a sort of a Tennessee theme to it. And I write in the dialect of the local dialect. And one of the things that I sort of have a little bit of a sadness about is that with every generation that goes through in Tennessee, we lose that language. We lose our dialect of East Tennessee primarily. And in the back is a glossary of what those words mean. So there's some words in there. If I told you there was a sow coon coming, what do you think that is? It's quiz time.
Female raccoon.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Well, that's what you think. But in Upper East Tennessee and up around Johnson County, Carter County, and even into Unicoi, the sow coon is a real hard thunderstorm.
Who'd have thought?
I don't know where it comes from, but that's just it'll be in volume 3. I didn't put it in volume 1 or 2 because it's not I didn't use it in the story. But anyway, so there's a glossary in there, and then there's other things and the dedications and the acknowledgments and all that's in the book. And And these stories have been in my head for a long time. And during COVID, I just sat down and wrote a bunch of them down, and turned out to be about 2 volumes worth. And with all the learning curve that I had to do the formatting and what's supposed to go in a nonfiction book, it's a real learning experience. Not the hardest thing I've ever done.
So I want to bring up the publishing company name.
Sure.
It's a Polecat Press. You see that our guest dons a cap with a polecat on it. And he asked me earlier if he stunk. And I'm like, is this a trick question? I'm like, I don't want to offend Pete. You know,
What are you asking?
And I couldn't think much about it, but sitting next to him, I'm picking up a little bit of a polecat odor now. So do you want to talk about that?
Well, yesterday morning, which was Sunday morning, I let my dogs out like I usually do right about daylight, and it was 4:30 a.m. It was way before daylight, but they quickly went out in the yard and began a war with one little black and white kitty out there that was actually a skunk. And they I don't know if they won or lost. The skunk went back up under the porch at the house, and then the dogs are still stinking. But I did go to Walmart, and the guy in Walmart looked at me kind of funny, and I said, do I smell bad? And he said, yes, sir, you do. and I said, he said, you smell like a skunk. And I said, well, I got sprayed this morning. So anyway, it'll wear off.
What's the trick? Just time to get the
Yeah,
smell?
time. Yeah, it's like a dead deer. You don't have to move it out of the road. It'll go away. Buzzards get it. Coyotes will eat it.
Well, so I guess I didn't realize, but so COVID's when you started writing these stories. So they are pretty much they're hot off the press. These books are new. I thought you started writing soon after your career and to retirement, but they haven't been out there very long. So go get you if you're listening and watching. Go get you one. How can somebody
it's on
find
Amazon?
one?
Well, if you want to buy them off Amazon, I get about half the money, but it's R.L. Pete Wyatt. You can just search that R.L. Pete Wyatt on Amazon, and they'll come up. Or if in the back of the book, if you have access, I've donated it to the library in Jefferson City, but in the back of the book, it gives my address that you can order them from, and gives shipping costs, and then I can sign them for you. But that's how you kind of get them. I thought Matt would offer to buy about 2 cases of them and leave them at the regional office, but he hadn't done that yet.
I bought my 2 copies.
I know you did.
You
did.
And
That's
look,
good.
mine is personally autographed
Yes.
with a message from Pete directed to me. And
Yeah.
Pete did say if you buy a copy and you request an autograph, he will sign the book for you. So
Yeah.
I encourage you to take advantage of that. Now, you do bear striking resemblance to this man on the cover. Is this any
I
relation?
wished I knew. I did.
It does.
I used to sell old postcard reprints, 8.5 by 10, for people to decorate their homes with, especially log cabins and stuff like that. And there was a guy that was had a booth up at the Apple Festival in Unicoi County, and they told me that was their great grandfather. And had I had any sense at all, I would have written down the name and the contact information, but I didn't think that I would ever have it on the cover of a book.
So could you share a story or two? I know you want people to buy the book, but could you share one or two that sticks out in your mind that you think folks would enjoy?
Okay, Matt brought it up about taking a live phone call. Oh, phew. Okay, I just had to think about who the audience is. Okay,
PG.
that's one of the things about working for the Wildlife Resources Agency. We get phone calls at the regional offices, and when I was working in Region 2 for a couple of years, Jane Johnson said, Pete, Cindy from down in Budget says that there's a woman on line 2, and if you could take the call, she's really frantic about what's going on down there. And it was at Thompson Station, as a matter of fact. And that's going to be in Volume 3, the story is.
Okay.
But it
Preview
is,
here.
yeah, preview and a segue here. But anyway, it was this lady. I picked up the phone and I said, "This is Pete White. May I help you?" And she said, "Yes, this is Suzanne Williams. I live down in Thompson Station." And she said, "My husband was out mowing the yard this morning." It's about this time of year. And said there was something fell out of a tree, big walnut tree in our yard, and it got down in his shirt, and it bit him and scratched him all in his shirt and everything. And he finally got it out and put it in the jar, and now it's in this jar, and it's hissing and striking at him, and we don't know what it is. And I said, "Well, is it green and about the size of a cigar?" in diameter and does it have these big projections coming out on it like horns? Yeah, that's it. What is that? And I said, well, that's called a hickory horn devil. It's a caterpillar from the royal walnut moth. And the royal walnut moth caterpillars eat hickory leaves and oak leaves and walnut leaves, and they make a beautiful moth. Well, is it poison? And I said, no, ma'am. And you could hear her husband in the background, Orville, I think was his name. He said, ask him if it's poison. And she said, he said it wasn't poison. And he said, well, ask him if it can hurt you because I'm scratched up and everything. And I said, well, what he needs to do is just put some antibiotic cream on there and it'll be all right. It's just like being briar scratched or something. Well, why does it strike at you? And I said, well, it's mimicking a snake, but it's not a snake. Are you sure it ain't no snake? And I said, no, it's a caterpillar. And then he kept saying, hey, you sure that thing won't hurt you? And I said, no, it won't hurt him. Tell him that it's not going to hurt him. It's just a caterpillar. Well, it's big. I said, I know it. It is big, and it's very unique looking, but it will not hurt you. So then she said, are you sure it ain't poison? And I said, no, ma'am, it is not poison, but it can kill you. And then she said, Orville, he said it can kill you. And Orville says, well, how can it kill you? And I said, tell him if he tries to swallow it, it could get hung in his throat and he could suffocate and die. Well, who in the world would try to swallow such a thing? And I said, I don't know, but that's the way I think it could kill you. So that was the end of that conversation. But we used to get questions of all ilk that you can imagine. And back in the olden days, when I first started as a wildlife officer, we had hunting guides that had our personal phone numbers in them. And so a third shift at a furniture company in Morristown, or third shift at some kind of a company, maybe in Johnson City, they would sit around at their break and they would sit around asking each other questions about different things. And you'd be surprised what they would call you at 2:30 in the morning and ask you, awaken you from a sleep and ask you these silly questions. But we felt obligated, I guess, to answer them at the time, and it was a great job.
Yeah. Well, it's not that far back. 83 you said, or 82 you started?
83. Full time.
But there was times where it was the home phone that the officer got the call, and sometimes the wife took the call and had to track down the officer. You didn't have the cell phones and as easy access as you do today. But that's just a taste of what's in these books, Matt. And I know you're thumbing through it there, but you've read 1 and 2. What's your take on the first 2 volumes there? Or at least you have them. I'm sure you've read most of it.
Yeah, I've read most of volume 1, and Pete is one of the best storytellers we've ever had in the agency. There are other ones too that don't have the penmanship that Pete has to sit down and write their stories, and I'm so grateful that he's taken time to do this. A lot of it is for the historic value. He's a great historian, but it's entertaining. Yeah, and every story is going to give you knee slapping type humor. And just one thing I wanted to throw out here, Bill Smith is another good storyteller that we have that recently retired with the agency. Hopefully we'll get him on a podcast one of these days. Yeah. Both of them are just very charismatic, and you love to sit down and listen to them. They can go for hours with stuff, but he quotes Bill Smith in here about something, and I spent about 10 years as a field wildlife officer myself, so I can relate to a lot of these situations, especially being lied to as a game warden. And I was raised in a Baptist Christian home that you took people at their word and you believed them. So when I became a lawman, I was very naive, and it was hard for me to deal with people lying to me because I wanted to believe people when they told me something that it was true. Yeah. But here's a good quote from Bill Smith. Pete says, my good friend W.A. Bill Smith jokingly says that when a baby is born in Upper East Tennessee, the daddy holds the baby close and whispers, lie to the game warden, lie to the game warden. This is repeated until post-adolescence. Is it possible that some of these folks are genetically predisposed to oppositional defiant disorder? And there's so much truth in that statement. I've had people look at me in the eye and swear on their mama's grave, swear to God, swear to Jesus, I'm telling you the truth. And you cut them some slack. You try to, benefit of the doubt. And then you find out later that they lied to you. Talk about getting in your craw. It did mine. Yeah. Do you want to elaborate on any
Well, as I said there about the dedication there, that I dedicated the book to all the game wardens that have ever taken the oath and put on a badge, because they have been lied to. Every game warden that's ever been lied to has pinned the badge and taken the oath. And so if you talk to any retired wildlife officer or any current wildlife officer, that's the first thing they'll tell you is that people lie. And in volume 2, I put a photograph in there that was back in the back. It's kind of back just at the last photograph in there, whether or not you can see that or not. But it's a little boy holding, looks like maybe a 16 gauge single barrel shotgun. He may be going out to go squirrel hunting. And his daddy says, "Remember, son, lie to the game warden."
I'll give you a good example of Wayne Rich, another not so long ago retired wildlife officer that Pete knows very well. I worked with Wayne on a case one time, and we were dealing with a certain individual in Jefferson County. We had his criminal background, all of his hunting and fishing violations printed off when we went to talk to him. And everything we asked him, "I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about." That was like his padded answer for everything. Pleading the fifth, more or less.
Yeah,
Wayne said Wayne had a memory like an elephant, probably still does. He's like, 1993, you're down there on the Holston River. I caught you fishing without a license. I wrote you a ticket. "I don't know what you're talking about." Wayne's like, "I was there for that one, so I know for a fact you're lying to me." And that's just a great example of people. I don't know if it's a defense mechanism that's innate to lie to try to get out of trouble, or if it's just because we wear the gun and badge and we're game wardens that they want to lie to us.
Well, let me tell you Wayne Rich story. Wayne came over. He was sent over when I first got to Unicoi County in 1983. And I don't know, the supervisor that we had, I guess he thought that I needed a little bit of tutelage over there, but I was supposed to go give a talk to the Unicoi County Coon Club. And it was one of my first public speakings that I did over there. Mm-hmm. And okay. So they sent Wayne over because Wayne had experience talking to coon clubs. So we go in there, and it's kind of a hostile environment to begin with. We get swarmed and we get several people asking us questions at the same time. You have to learn that skill. How you can answer 3 questions from 3 different people on 3 different topics, So that's a skill that you learn. But anyway, we go in and they finally call the meeting to order, and Wayne Rich gets up and he says, "My name is Wayne Rich. Some of you may have heard of me and some of you may have not. And the first thing I'm going to do is get down on your level." And there I am sitting there. That was my introduction, and I get to get up and announce, but talk to them. But okay, I'm down on your level now. So it's anyway. It was fun to be have a rural county, very rural county, and Unicoi County was at the time had 15,000 people in it. It was 30 miles long and 15 miles wide, and half of it was U.S. Forest Service lands. And so half of the activity that takes place in my books, half of the stage is set, is on government land. And you have to know how to pronounce that. There's a story in this volume, too, that anybody knows Don Crawford. You should buy the book just for that one story. I was his field training officer.
Hey, Don is in our direct chain of command now.
Right.
He is, yeah.
So, but I did send him the draft, and he approved it to go in there. I'm glad he did. It's a pretty good story.
We'll hold that one for the book. Y'all need to buy the book to hear that story. Well, not only did you have many adventures in the woods and working as an officer and as a biologist, but cooking. You have a passion for cooking. And I think the first time I met you or came across you was at a BOW event or something like that, where you're doing some Dutch oven cooking. So talk a little bit about that passion, how that came about.
Well, it's Dutch oven cooking. It was always fascinating to me. I mean, my mother cooked in cast iron, and she had an old Dutch oven that was made for the oven. To put in an electric oven or a wood stove oven, and didn't have legs on the bottom of it. And the Dutch oven cooking that I do, I like to cook in what's called spider scale. It's actually the Wildlife Agency published a little thin cookbook with some of my recipes in there.
Right.
And on the front cover, it's my spider collection, what's called a spider Dutch oven. And it has a handle on it just like a regular skillet, but then it has a lid on it that has a little groove in it that not John Sevier, Paul Revere. Paul Revere, not John Sevier. But anyway, Paul Revere was a silversmith, I think, but he actually invented the lid that goes on these skillets, and they used to cook on the hearth. And it goes back to the early 1700s, late 1600s, and they're called Dutch ovens because the Dutch used to trade with people with these ovens. They made them in all around the world, even South Africa. There's Dutch ovens in South Africa that are a little different than what we have in America. But anyway, you use coals. You don't use any electricity, and the charcoal is perfect for that. And so during the BOW, I almost made another bad. Anyway, becoming an outdoor woman. I used to teach that cooking class for many years.
Yeah.
And you can cook anything in a Dutch oven that you can cook, on the stove. Essentially, we even made ice cream here one time in a Dutch oven. We used an aluminum Dutch oven, and we put ice in a bucket, and we just rolled the bucket around in a circle till we made ice cream in one. So you can even make ice cream without fire.
Wow.
But anyway, it's that little book. I don't know if it's still available through the agency, but it's usually free if you write or call.
We need to see if we can get another run of those published, because that is one of the most popular things I've ever laid on the table. And we keep a few put back just because they got gone so quickly for special occasions.
Yeah, my specialty is old-fashioned bread pudding in a Dutch oven, and it's very popular. And then also I make a really killer coconut macaroon cake in a Dutch oven. You don't have to just cook cobblers in there, but you can bake and broil and fry. You can do pizzas in there. So it's very versatile. You can do a lot of things with Dutch ovens, and that's sort of what I did.
Well, I've been thinking about that. I think it'd be cool to learn how to cook over fire like that. I love camping and cooking over the fire, but that's my next purchase is a Dutch oven with, where you put the coals on the top and explore that or experiment, because you don't know you don't know what your temperature is, do you? And you don't know how long to leave it in there. It's kind of a
no. You can get it. It's a science.
Yeah.
It's also an art, but you can gauge your temperature very easily with the number of coals you put on, and it has to do with the diameter of the oven. Maybe one from 8 inches up to 16 inches.
Right.
The number of coals you put on the top, the number of coals you put around the bottom, and the heat comes up. And I taught some classes at Washington College Academy, which is up in Greene/Washington County up there. And Washington College Academy was founded in 1780. And so the year that they founded that college, they were probably cooking with Dutch ovens there.
Wow. I'll have to take one of those classes.
Indeed. Food just tastes better when it comes out of something like that.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. Well, Pete, this has been fun. We've learned a lot, heard some good stories. Look forward to, learning more from the books. Appreciate you letting us come, or appreciate you joining us here in this setting, and it's been fun to talk.
Well, I've had a good time.
Yeah. Two people that I know were special to Pete that are no longer with us, Ken Ripley and Gary McWhirter. You got to work with both of them. Can you say a quick word about those men?
Well, they left here way too early, and both of them were very phenomenal people. They were just great human beings, and I dedicated the book to them. And then another one that was Steve Bowman, who worked with the U.S. Forest Service, and Steve died in a helicopter crash, and anyway, they were just good folks, and I felt like that I needed to dedicate it to them.
We appreciate that, and we're glad to have another good agency person on the show with us today. So you've been a blessing and an inspiration to us all, Pete.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt, for lining this up. Thank you guys for watching, for listening. Thanks again, Pete, and go check out his book, Amazon, or if you get a copy, there's ways to contact him there, and go check it out. Go get you a copy.
Tell us one more time to contact you directly to get them, where you make more money.
Well, okay, Matt, you can call me at 865-898-7740, and then if you're not trying to extend my car warranty or sell me burial insurance or something like that, I'll talk to you.
There you go. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in. Stay connected with TWRA by visiting our website at tnwildlife.org. and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hey, it's all about Tennessee wildlife. It's what we do. Tennessee WildCast will be on the air again next week. We'll see you then.